Now we're going to try to do the second kind of bowl called a stretch bowl. And basically what we're doing is we're going to make a cylinder. We're going to predetermine the lip on the cylinder. We're going to stretch it out just like we might have with our coffee mug a little bit, but we're going to take it a little bit farther. The advantages of a stretch bowl is, one, you can get them taller, and you can make them lighter and a little bit larger in scope. The disadvantage is it's much more difficult to do. So out of our bowls, you're going to find that I want you to try to do each type of bowl as we work through this. And all we're going to do is we're going to go back to the same things that we normally do. We're going to center it, get it ready, start to develop our cylinder. I'll go right through that. This is what we're going to use. It's called a wood rib. And I'm going to place it similar like this in my hand to stretch the outside surface. I wanted to use a rib as opposed to my fingers. My fingers have a lot of surface here. This rib has just a little tiny bit of surface. It also will build up a little bit of slip as we're pushing it to help lubricate it so we can get it really thin. Sometimes when you throw a stretch bowl, you can almost get it paper thin, and it still holds as long as you keep your arc and keep working with it and keep it well lubricated. Okay, so here we go. We're going to get this thing into positioning. Get into your body. Remember, when we're making bowls, I'm making small bowls right now, large bowls. It's the same concept. It's just with more clay. That's all that's difference. A little more difficult, but once you get the fundamentals of learning how to make the cylinder, learning how to make the two different kinds of lip forms that we've looked at, basically once you get those down, it's just nothing but practice, practice, practice. And like I've said earlier, that working in clay is probably one of those tactile kinds of responses, and you have to discipline yourself and work really hard at it. Centered there, we're going to come in. We want to make a center hole in here. Notice that my hands work really fast outside here, but once I get onto the clay, it's in tandem with how fast that clay is revolving or spinning around, how much I can push and pull it and keep it centered at all times. If you're not centered out here and in here, you might as well stop, especially with a stretch bowl. So now we're going to come in here, we're going to scoop across the bottom a little bit. So we're kind of setting up the idea of a cylinder. Okay? You might want to come in here. When we first start out, we have a tendency to keep pulling out this direction, and our clay gets out here and eventually collapses on it. Just collar it back in. Just get into the habit of collaring it back in. I always compress the top of my clay a little bit because it has a tendency to want to tear a little. We use recycled clay all the time. We buy some new and we recycle with it. So it doesn't have a whole lot of time to age. So it's not Cadillac clay, but it's good clay. And if you can learn how to use this, the really good stuff that costs a lot of money, you'll be really great at that. Okay, so first of all, we're going to come in here. We're going to scribe a little area down here at the bottom. And we're going to do our first thing is we're actually going to pull the walls up a little bit so we can get some height in our bowl. Okay, but we want them really thick because we've got to, when we're making a stretch bowl, even if it's real thin on the sides, we want a big anchor up here for a lip. So we're going to predetermine that lip right now. If I do it later and this is real thin, it's going to twist on me and tear apart. So I'm going to pre-design that lip right now. So I'm going to use the more difficult lip. I'm going to come down a little bit. I'm going to push in and down. That sets the parameters of our lip. You can see them right there. And I'm going to push in and up a little bit, keeping them still fairly thick up here. Okay, so there we go. Now I can go ahead and lift this bowl up. Remember, as I pull it out, the lip's going to get also thinner. Okay, so we've got to keep it thick and keep it centered and going there. Everything is in relationship to how fast that wheel's going. Remember, we want to throw a little bit out of control. Now we're going to lift that up a little bit. So basically what we've done is we've made a big cylinder at this point. Okay, and try to keep this in a little bit. Now we're going to take our tool, wood rib, and we're going to hold it like this. Make sure you got a good grip on it. So go ahead and wash it off a little bit so that you've got a good grip on here. I'm going to add a little moisture. I'm just going to take it and let it fall right down my fingers, down on the inside there. Then I'm going to use this part of my tool, and I'm just going to start ribbing it out a little at a time. If I get some friction, I'll slowly release, come back, add some moisture, and go back to it. I also like to hold the outside of this lip up here with my hand, just kind of give me an idea what's going on. And I'm going to be looking on the inside of this volume and trying to get it to work with me. And you'll feel it gets a little different feel, push and pull, as we bring it up and out more. And you notice that lip's starting to get smaller as we bring it out. Did you see the slip that builds up on here? That's real helpful. Add a little moisture down it. We're going to come out here, we're going to add some more volume to this. See how far we can push this clay? We can bring it way out here into our bowl shape. We'll trim this later on. Add a little moisture here. I'm going to redefine that lip a little bit more. Now on your lip you want it to come out over the volume, so we're going to have to look down over the side here, see where we're at. We're going to come in here and we're just going to flare that out. So we come on just like that, hold nice and steady, smoothing that up just like that. There we go. We can also trim some more on this later. We're going to come in here, clean up all the, usually have a lot of little extra slip in the bottom. Take your sponge, clean that up a little bit. Any place that we might have a little extra slip. And as usual, I usually come in like I said earlier, I make a little decoration on the bottom. Just make sure my fingers are smooth enough. And I can come in here, hold them nice and gentle, and put a little spiral in the bottom of it, just for decoration. Now we've got it round. We've got a lip. It comes out over the volume. It's a less clay, bigger volume than we had prior to this with less clay. It'll be lighter. We won't have to trim as much. Now we're going to go ahead and cut this off with our wire. So I'm going to slow down that wheel. I always like to get it going a little bit. And just cut underneath it. Whoops, that happens occasionally. Cut underneath there like that. There we go. Then we're going to pop this off. Hold down. Get off there. And our bat's coming off. That's our stretch bowl.